Ladies and gentlemen, hello. My name is Artur Zaborski. I am the host of the Q&A with Angelo Madsen-Minax, the director of the film North by Current. Hello, Angelo. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Arthur. Thank you for having me.
Hi. So apparently I have to start with the obvious question about this great film because I believe that it had to be like a really tough decision for you to put the camera on you to tell your own story, to tell the story of your family. So how did it all begin for you? Was it some kind of a therapy that you wanted to achieve, or was the reason completely different for you to start this project?
Yeah, I started really slowly. I didn't really start in earnest until 2015, and my niece's death was in 2011. So it took me a few years before I realized that I was ready to kind of go there. And I think kind of like letting the immediacy of all of the tragedy and incarceration and persecution and all this stuff sort of settle a bit before I started really digging into it was really important. And that's partially why a lot of the film kind of like unfolds as a retelling, because I wasn't actually filming arrests. I wasn't filming, child protective services swooping in to deal with things. I wasn't in the middle of all that filming. I was busy like experiencing it and living it. And so I think that like couple of years removal was really important before I realized that there was something I wanted to dig into there. And when I started thinking about it, I did think about it. I thought it would be therapeutic, but I was thinking about it more as a sort of like an abolitionist piece. I was thinking it would have a little bit more to do with addressing the politics of rural whiteness and what police brutality, how that looks different with rural whiteness. And that was, I mean, I had like intellectual aspirations to think that through. And then when I started shooting, that really just wasn't what was coming through. So, obviously there's a lot of embedded content and subtext about rural whiteness. And but that gets to stay subcontext because so many other issues really like took light in the story. And the main thing being one that was like the film became really experiential as opposed to like investigative or like exploratory. Like I wasn't investigating the death anymore, and I also wasn't like excavating theoretical content. So it became like really a first person. Like the only way to do it really became a first person storytelling, first person narrative. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think it was certainly therapeutic. I tend to work alone a lot, or I work with my close friends a lot. I don't usually work with like industry people or crew, um, and that has working with people I love has really like changed my approach to the work and also my relationships. And I was consciously sort of thinking about like, what if I could apply that idea to my family? Um, what if the ways that close relationships get made when people work together on projects could be like applied to this other group of people that like are struggling to connect. Um, and so I think it was successful in that way. Like we definitely have much more, I don't know, I wouldn't say easy relationships because our relationships are super complicated, as all child parent relationships are. But we have more of a relationship for sure.
Gotcha, because often when I speak to the directors who decide to tell the story of themselves or their family, they often repeat that actually when you have your camera with you, it's like a good reason and also like a good wall between you
Oh,
and your relatives to ask some difficult questions that without camera actually you wouldn't ask. I'm
yeah.
just curious if this is the mechanism that was happening here as well for you.
Yeah, definitely. A camera does provide a certain type of justification, especially when you frame something as a documentary. It sort of suggests the fact that questions will be asked. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think the camera did do that, but I also, uh, I don't know, I think they forgot about the camera a lot too. Um, because the way I kind of approached it when I started filming was to just kind of have it all the time, and use it all the time, and but also not try to hide it at all. So like part of the, like a lot of the film I feel like has this vibe of sort of like POV cinema, which is not a real thing, but like I am not silently observing, I'm like engaging with other people in the film while I'm also filming. um and so I think the fact that like I was an active participant in our structure, and I was also filming, um just sort of like really put them at ease, because I wasn't attempting to remove myself from the unit while filming, you know, which is like a common tactic, right? You like make something observational as like you're supposed to pretend the camera doesn't exist or something, or that there's no one behind the camera. And I sort of did the opposite of that. And I think that that conversational component between like, you know, like subjects, for lack of a better term, and filmmaker, um, melted away tension.
Mhm. Because like when I was watching your film, like for me it was also like some shield when you go for the confrontation. It was like when you ask the questions, and you know that actually when you ask this difficult hard question, you know that because you have your camera, you force the person that you are speaking to just focus, to just give you like the deeper answer. That the people that you have on the screen, they do not like react emotionally, they do not like scream and shout, they just like think about your question and give the answer. And it doesn't matter if it's the question about the domestic violence, or if it's the question about what your mother told you when you were younger, when you were a child, and when you and she said she even doesn't remember that, but still all of this question, you force your person to you speak to just think about it deeper and give you like the longer, deeper answer for that.
Yeah, I think part of it is like the idea of the follow-up question. Like often when you're having a conversation like about domestic violence or something like that, it would be like, well, what happened, you know? But then I think when you're having that conversation and someone is explaining that to you, you wouldn't normally, if you were in a conversation, ask, well, why do you think he did that, you know? Or like part of the conversation would be to like have solidarity and support and compassion. And so I think the camera did allow me a little bit to like um, have a little bit more of an observer role and be able to um, ask questions that I definitely wouldn't ask if I was just kind of sitting and responding as a sibling.
Gotcha. And it was really incredible for me how relatable this film was for me. Like how many aspects of it I could relate to. The question you ask about identity, the question you ask about being a man, the question you ask in your film about being a son, being our parents, a child. It's really incredible, and it works really well, and it doesn't matter what kind of family we are coming from. So it's really incredibly universal.
Thank you. Yeah, I think everyone, I mean, everyone has experienced family to some degree, and it's like some of those struggles are completely universal, and like you can't, you know, it's interesting the degree to which family structures can a little bit be essentialized, because we think of so many experiences being like you can't essentialize experiences. There's so many different experiences, yet at the same time, like everyone knows what it's like to be in a family, you know, and to like develop coping mechanisms that you've developed from birth, and like ways you've communicated from birth, that are maybe not necessarily ways you want to communicate, but like are sort of ingrained in you, and what it's like to kind of to grow up and to have to self-actualize. We all share the experience of like ontogeny, of like progressing through time. And there's nothing, you know, there's no way to uh, parcel that out in a like micro individualized way, because it is just universal.
Gotcha. And so actually, when you were working on this film, was it like a current of your thoughts, and was it like catching everything that's going on every day? Or did you work with some plan, or did you plan what you want to achieve? And when you knew that actually this film is ready and you have your footage and material that you are ready to put as a film?
Yeah, that was a long process. I generally don't work with scripts. I'm usually just kind of like filming and filming and filming and thinking through connective tissues between topics and ideas. And I knew that I wanted to use our archival family footage from the beginning. And I knew that I wanted to think about this idea of like, you know, lineage and like family across time and like the cyclical nature of life. And so I really kind of just let that idea guide everything I focused on and talked about and thought about with everybody. Putting the film together was like the most epic puzzle, the most challenging, joyous, epic puzzle ever. Just because I'm juggling so many like big themes that I want to address head on, that I didn't want to be subtext, that I wanted to be like surface content, you know? So like ideas about nonlinear time or ideas about like how we build mythology or build stories to explain things to ourselves and to the people around us. Like I wanted those to be drawn attention to as large thematic things and not just kind of subtextual. And so figuring out how to sort of point to those in an overt way without it becoming like really pedantic or boring was a challenge. And yeah, I think that weaving, I mean, I edited the film the whole time I was making it. So from the very first shoot I did, I kept editing. And I was living in a few different places when I was shooting. I was in Memphis, and then I was in Burlington, and now I'm in Brooklyn, New York, and now I'm in upstate New York. But I usually would go visit for like a week or two, like I don't know, 6 to 8 times a year. So like almost once a month, I would like go for a week or two, like whenever I could, and then stay for long stretches during holidays. So I wasn't filming every day. I was filming in like these like bursts, micro bursts, which I think was useful because then I would take the footage after that shoot, go home, dump all the footage, look at everything, and start thinking through my ideas. Yeah, just making edits the whole time. I mean, I made my first kind of sample, I guess, in like 2016 after the first shoot. I put together like 20 minutes to be like, here's what I'm thinking. But I think part of that is because I am an editor. That's like that's where I work best, is in like the editing and the sound work. So as soon as I can like fall on something that I really like in the shooting, I'm already sort of like thinking through where I want to juxtapose another idea with that.
So, yeah, because the construction of the film is really incredible. I was talking about this film with one of the people from the festival, and actually we agreed that your film for us is more like a feature film about with this tension that you are waiting about what's going to happen at the end of the film. It's not like the regular documentary story about something, but it's more like building this tension through the whole film, and you're still waiting for what's going to happen and it's like the final plot of that. So it's really something uncommon for documentary field, I believe.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think it's also like, it's interesting because like, I think the tension is there too, but like, it's all micro tension. So if you're not, I mean, the film rewards careful viewership, you know, like if you're not watching really carefully, you could get bored. Because those areas of attention are like, are very nuanced. And that was like, part of the hard work, I think, is to like, for me anyway, is to figure out like, I think I struggle with like sometimes being a little bit too vague or being a little bit too heavy handed. And like the editing challenge is to really sort of like narrow the gap between those things. So you can like have some things that are very clear and very sculpted and other things that sort of, you know, float behind the scenes and create more of an affect or a feeling than they are kind of like on the surface. But yeah, I love editing. It's like, it's the most fun to just like figure out new ways to build something out. Like there's so many different ways the film could have gone or been made. Yeah, it's super interesting to edit.
Yes, and can you tell us during the editing process, was it hard for you to like save all of this footage that you planned to save when you were shooting the material, or when you were watching it with the distance and you started to thinking that maybe it's too personal as for your family, maybe it's something that you don't want to share with the viewers? What was your reaction and how was your approach to that?
Yeah, I'm a little torn, honestly, because sometimes I feel like I make work that I want people to see it. And I want people to like connect with it, but I don't necessarily want people to feel entitled to it. So like, I think the best way to receive a film that's super personal is sort of, as a viewer, is to sort of like approach it like a gift. And I think viewers oftentimes approach films as if they're in, because it's a film, they feel entitled to the content in it in some way, like they are just owed it or deserve it, or it should be blanket for them. And I think this film sort of like demands that people check that a little bit. And I think if they're not checking it, they can become very uncomfortable while watching it, because it is so personal. And I think people that struggle with some of the issues that are in the film find the film even more uncomfortable than others, because it is just really bare and raw in a way that doesn't attempt to kind of like gloss over certain things. It was definitely hard to watch a lot of footage. And there's some things I didn't watch for a long time after I shot them. And some things that, you know, were recorded on audio and not video. And so posed certain editing challenges, but ultimately it was sort of like exposure therapy, you know, like the more times I listened to myself calling 911, you know, the less intense it got. But it took a long time, and it definitely was a tremendous emotional drain on my life for that 5 years. And it still is, because it's a life, you know, like everyone's lives are complicated. But yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot.
And what about your family? What were their reactions when you showed them the film that was finally edited, the final version?
Yeah. My sister-in-law, excuse me, my sister did not want to see the film. And she was like, of course, fine with me filming the whole time because she's in the film very much all the time. But she did tell me a couple months ago, she's like, I don't think I'm ready to see it yet. I think it's going to be too hard for me to watch. But I trust you and your decisions, and, you know, do what you will. And I think maybe she'll be ready in a couple of years to watch it. But I will say also that my brother-in-law, David, who is in the film, passed away last month unexpectedly. And so I have a feeling his departure is going to make her even less excited about watching it in the near future. So I think it's going to take a few years for her to be ready to watch it. But I do think that it will be powerful for her when she's ready. Everyone else in my family has seen it. And I was so nervous when I sat down to show it to them, and I like took my laptop and plugged it into this giant TV, you know, and had them all sitting in the living room. And I was like, okay, here goes. And they really liked it. And I was like, they continue to like impress me with their capacity, because even though they like don't have the same kinds of exposures to culture that I have. Oops, did I freeze? No. Okay.
No.
Okay. They don't have the same level of exposure to other cultures that I have. Like, for example, they don't fly in airplanes, you know? So like my mother's never left the United States. And like, so just like my reach, my expanse in the world is, I feel so much more informed by other things. And I feel like sometimes that makes me think that like I'm more receptive to, you know, nuanced creativity than someone in a rural place might be. But it's just not true. Like, I think if people are open, they're open, and that's that. But yeah, they really resonated with it. They loved the child voiceover. They loved the poetry. And they loved how I approached religion. It felt very like, it didn't feel like I was criticizing anything to them. which I think is like a really good sign, because I'm not interested in simple critiques. I'm more interested in like laying bare some ideas and like figuring them out, you know. It was interesting because my mom in particular was really, really moved by it. And then it was a slow unfolding of a couple of days where like my dad was pretty like chill. I mean, I think it's just hard in general for people to see themselves on screen, let alone see themselves like looking like shit, saying, you know, terrible things, or like, you know, like, you know, yeah, just like, or like any number of ways in which it's hard to look at yourself regardless. Yeah, I was surprised by their capacity to just be like, wow, you did something really interesting. It's like not like a normal documentary. Yeah, it was great. I mean, my mom, like the next day, she was a little bit like, had some more criticisms. And then the third day, she was like, I like it again. It was funny. She had like a sort of like 4-day kind of like thing where she would come back and be like, what is she, one day, like some classic of my mom, like the first night after they watched it, she got up in the morning and was like, I had nightmares all night. It must have been that movie. And I was like, God, Mom, so classic. But like, you know, just like, yeah, it's a lot to like revisit a synopsis of the past 5 years of your life, you know, in cinematic terms, which is like very emotive. It's different than like reading a court report on the page, you know.
Yes. Before I ask another question, just let me tell you that I am really sorry for your loss. It's a really sad news about your brother-in-law. Sorry to hear that. Angela, at the beginning, we were talking about therapeutic aspect of this documentary. After some time that passed after you finished this project, and after being present at the film festivals, and after seeing how this film is relatable for the audience, can you tell me if you feel that actually it was something that changed you somehow, or that it brings some kind of catharsis, or did it act therapeutic for you?
Yeah, totally. I think most people that are making work, and I don't know, because I don't normally make traditional documentaries, I can't speak to documentary very well. I usually make essay films and more experimental films and weirder scripted stuff. But I do think that, like, you know, making a piece is an exorcism of some kind. You have something that you need to get out and figure out and look at and shake up or whatever. And so I think any time someone is making something, they're exercising something. They're like digging through something, regurgitating something to like dissect. And so I think that will always be therapeutic. And I know, like, whatever, I'm not of the camp that's like art as self-expression, you know, because that's too simple. Art is not self-expression if it's meant for other people to bear witness to. But I also don't think that art has to be sterile and theoretical. And I think that the best art is critical and theoretical, but also affective and emotive. And for me, like putting heart into the work, like really allowed me to do some processing, and also some figuring out to which degree I can be there and to which degree I need to like let go, and things that I can do and things that I can't do. You know, I think a lot of it is sort of like figuring out the 101s of like how to love someone who is an addict, and or how to, like, you know, love someone that is in a domestic violence situation, or how to love someone that can't understand your choices in life, you know, like, and I think that kind of that's the core of therapy, is to like look through those things and think about them, and then assess what you can bring to the table healthily. And I think I just learned a lot about the ways that valuing the ways that I show up for my loved ones and in my friendships as well. And also like learning boundaries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like actually this aspect that you just said, like what I really enjoyed in your film is that the fact that actually you tell somehow not in a very regular way your own story. You're talking about your past, about your transition, about the way how the interaction between you and your family looked like from your point of view, but also you present it from the point of view of the different people. So this mixture is like really interesting, and finding this common field, it's really something that I was thinking about while I was watching your film, but I was also thinking that it has to be like a really interesting thing, and it has to be something really bringing something new about yourself to your relatives, to the people that you love, to the people that are your family. It's also like another part of the story, right? It's something like something that adds something new to this.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of it too is just like I don't have I mean I've been trans for 15 years, so I don't have those same sets of questions that young people who are going through that process early in their lives have, and I think that gets to be reflected in the film in a really like holistic way, where it's like I'm not interested in talking about a lot of things that someone might assume a trans filmmaker might talk about. That's actually not what I'm interested in. I'm just too damn old, you know, like, so I think like opening up more space for more complicated thoughts about existence in general was really important for me to prioritize. And that's part of the reason I like, I don't know, made really careful decisions around like what kinds of personal things I wanted to include, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, but it also seems to be like very important that actually we have so many ingredients, so many experience in our life that make us who we are nowadays, right? That it's impossible to tell that that was something in your past and that was something in your past and that caused that you are who you are nowadays. Like your film, in my opinion, your film tells it in a very great way that actually there is so many elements and so many influences that make us who we are these days. Yeah. Okay, so Angela, I think that unfortunately we ran out of time for our Q&A. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Thank you so much, for finding the time for this Q&A session. And hopefully next year we see each other face to face in Krakow during the 62nd Krakow Film Festival. But so far we are enjoying the 61st edition and enjoying the great films that we can watch, including your film, apparently.
Yeah, thank you so much, Archer. It was really lovely to talk to you. I'm so sorry I can't be there in person, and I'm bummed about it, but I hope to meet you in person next time.
Exactly. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.